Hi, I'm G Pettit from St James's Place Financial Advisor Academy. I'm delighted to be joined by Jo Glynn-Smith, professional coach who often deals with people considering a career change. So Jo, we recently did a study with Indeed and we found out that 1 in 4 UK workers were dissatisfied with their careers, and they were citing things like earning potential or work-life balance as 2 of the key drivers. Is that something that you find is common?
It is actually, and I think more so since COVID. So I think where we transitioned into a very different way of working, I think people are starting to look at their lives probably with more objectivity and sort of saying, what more could I get and how else could I do this to make life a little bit easier? I think when you go through a huge change like that and the way that work kind of works now, it's shifted so dramatically, it kind of makes you ask questions. So I think that's what I'm seeing the most, is that people are really looking for kind of answers, whether it be, when we talk about work-life balance, it's such a broad topic. And I think with COVID, where we were at home, you were around your family more, and your day was a little bit more your own, although statistically, I think people are actually working harder. I think that then you start to ask questions about what more could I get? And, am I being paid enough to do what I do? And is there another way of doing things that allows me to have some of that access that I've really enjoyed in that kind of really exceptional period? And asking questions is the beginning of all change. So you really start to see people, and technology. I think if we look at the shifts in technology, I can't even imagine 10 years ago talking about, let's have a group meeting on a computer. It just wouldn't have happened. You just go into a meeting. A meeting was a meeting in person, and now, of course, it's flexible. So, the joy of what I do is I run my own business. I run my own time. I can coach from anywhere, and I think a lot of people are now saying, okay, I can work from anywhere, which means I don't have to be in a city, or I don't necessarily have to be in one particular country. And there's a trend for holiday work days as well. So things have really changed an awful lot.
I agree. And whereabouts are you based, Jo?
So I'm based in London, and I do quite like going into offices. I mean, one of the joys is I have a real variety in the work that I do, and I like going in. I like meeting people in person. I think energetically it's great, and I don't think that these changes are necessarily the best for culture or society, but I do think it gives you flexibility. And I think the thing that, and a lot of women, because I work with a lot of women, but really, really wanted prior to this huge sort of working shift was to be considered for flexibility, which of course is really coming into the workplace, and there are also laws that allow people to be considered at least for flexibility. I mean, you'd never been able to ask for flexibility before. It just wasn't something that people would ever consider. So flexibility, is something that is, actually makes things a bit harder. I hate to say it, but I think it's something that people really want to try to get more of in their working life. And so maybe that's what's leading to some of these considerations. Is if you're in a company that is very sort of traditional and isn't considering flexibility, but you've got maybe 2 little kids, or maybe you're caring for somebody, or maybe you have to travel quite far, just to have that consideration even if it's not going to be considered, maybe that's leading to some of those figures that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And I think what you described could be labelled as career curiosity. So people are looking maybe at the grass on the other side of the fence and thinking, could I do that job over there? Will it be better for me? But the research shows that people at Gen X are a little bit more nervous about moving. So any thoughts around why that might be?
I just think the way we've been brought up. I mean, you went to school, you got your qualifications, and then you went into a career, and really that was it once you were in your career. And quite a lot of the work that I do is that kind of working with people to kind of imagine what else they could use their skills and strengths for, because you feel like you're a little bit trapped sometimes. I've gone into this particular career pathway, and you can't see whether there are branches left or right. But if you can sit and reflect on what it is that how to do, and then how could you create a narrative around that would get an employer interested, it creates opportunity. But I think the other thing that has made a massive impact on Gen X, so my generation, is Gen Z. And Gen Z are very entrepreneurial by nature, and they recognise that going into the workplace for them is much more challenging. We had more traditional pathways into work, and there were probably I'm going to say more jobs. Yeah, there probably are. Technology's changed a lot. It's shrunk a lot of companies down. So I think if you're just coming out of university now in your early 20s, mid 20s, the likelihood is you're going to have several careers, and therefore you're entrepreneurial already. Your mindset is already thinking, I may have learned accounting, or I may have learned about finance, but what else could I use that for? And could I have several things on the boil at once? And now the technology allows that to also be a reality. Whereas I think before, we didn't have any of that available to us. So you traditionally went into a company, and then if you were lucky, you interviewed for another job in a similar company, and people could only see that linear pathway. But that is not the case. And I think the difficulty for Gen X is because if you're growing up with one thing, of course, it's difficult to shift. The other thing that's really getting in the way for them is technology, in that they're not learning it. So they're feeling stuck because they're feeling there's a lot of fear surrounding new technology. It's moving so quickly. Every week there's a new AI system or some kind of platform that we need to get to grips with. They're quite glitchy. They're quite difficult. Younger generations are much more confident around tech. And I think, anybody sort of my age, they've just got to grips with the things that they know, Excel and a bit of Outlook and then suddenly you've got, you're throwing into the mix, even ChatGPT. There's so much suspicion. I use it all the time. It's one of my favorite tools because it makes my life so much easier. It's quick. But, I know a lot of people who are even fearful to be on social media or to even use it as a tool for marketing, and it's free. But it's just education. So I think that's another thing that is very challenging. And I think there needs to be a coming together of generations in terms of looking at where our skills and strengths lie. But what's going to be really challenging is where traditionally people are very comfortable in a hierarchical working environment. We've now got to get to a phase where there's going to have to be kind of respect in both directions, because some of these younger employees are more up to date and more in tune with these technologies. And if we could find a way to work together, I think that could be really powerful. But I think the exodus is also based on, I'm not relevant anymore. I don't know this stuff, nor potentially am I willing to learn it. And therefore I'll just do something else because I'm too scared to kind of face that lack of knowledge, because my experience, why should I, that type thing.
So I think that's super interesting, and I'm nodding away because I can see many of these things sort of playing out in the world. But do you think ageism impacts career mobility, and what advice would you give to those older people considering a career change?
Potentially. I doubt many people my age are going to be the first person on a list of candidates for a new startup in AI tech, fintech, or I doubt it, because they probably won't look at my experience and think I'm not necessarily relevant. But an ageism does exist, and as I get older, I'm recognizing that. But I spent most of my life fighting the gender pay gap and the struggles that women have in the workplace, and we now seem to have another one. So it's definitely challenging, but it's up to us to kind of accept that challenge and take it on. And that's about looking at where those gaps are in our skill set and being brave enough to say, I need to do something about it. Otherwise, the options are that you sort of fade into obscurity. And I never want to do that. So, and I don't want any of my clients to do that either. So I think it's about saying, okay, where are the gaps? What can I do about it? And it may be painful to re-educate. Because a lot of people, if you've done your university degrees, your masters or whatever you've done back in your 20s and now you're in your 50s, re-education can feel really uncomfortable. But once you get into it, it's extraordinary. It's like you've opened Pandora's box. I changed careers, completely changed careers. And I did a year of re-education, and the beginning was just so painful. I remember saying to my kids, because it was sort of at the end of COVID, really, when we were having those kind of blips where you had to work from home or whatever. And I remember saying to them, I'm so in awe of you doing your education on this computer, because it is really boring. And they did brilliantly to try and stay engaged, but you could see why people were drifting off. And I was learning my new trade in the same way, and it was so hard to stay focused. Some of my days were 10-hour days on Zoom with a cohort of people, and it was really hard work and really tiring. But also part of that was I wasn't in the habit of education. And so these are the little things that we need to kind of face. And then once you've got used to it, I think it's the most amazing thing, re-educating when you're older, because often you're re-educating in something that you have a desire to do. Whereas I think you're going through the steps when you're younger, like you've got to go to university. What are you going to do at university? You don't know yourself yet. So you're like, oh, I quite like reading, I'll do English, or I quite like this, I'll do that. And then you go through your 20s where you're maturing and kind of working out what life's going to look like, and actually what are you good at? Because I think we get a false sense of what we're good at school, because it's led by exams. You get results, and maybe it's really good at exams, but maybe you don't really know what's going to make you excited and motivated, and so you learn all that in your 20s. Actually, I'm going to say your 20s, 30s, and 40s, but you learn that a lot in your 20s, and then you sort of think, oh, okay. But what tends to happen is that we end up in something that we sort of doesn't really align with us. So I think re-educating when you're older is often fulfilling a desire, and so you're more motivated to do it. So once you've cracked open the kind of let's use this education muscle, I've got to try and use these parts of my brain that I haven't used for a long time, then it's just like, wow, it's amazing. I cannot stop learning. I am so excited about this new journey that I'm on and what it gives me in terms of fulfillment, satisfaction, what I can do for my clients, and then bolting on the 25 years of work experience that I've had. It is a joy. But learning for me now is, I just think it's a necessity. I think everybody should just be continually learning, and it's one of the strengths that we know that we need to really work on if we're going to get through working from now on, because work's evolving so much and tech is evolving so much. We're going to have to keep learning it. IBM released some stat saying that any new tech skill has a lifespan of 2.5 years.
So there's something else to learn.
So we've always got something new to learn. Every time any of our platforms update, you're like, what's this now?
And also, I think, is not to put fear into people that, you've got to keep up. There's this pace of movement. There's new things to learn all the time. That is all true. But how do you help people focus on the skills they do have, their transferable skills, 25 years of work experience? What elements of that are still relevant and are really valuable?
I guess it depends what you want to do. I think that you have to look at, first of all, with any coaching client, we're establishing a goal. So there's a desire to do something, and I won't take on anybody unless there's intention in the first place. So they have to really want to do what they want to do. And often I'm there because they don't know how to do it or how to get there. So they've got some point in the future that they're interested in getting towards. My role really is to help bring out in them all the things they already know, get it into some kind of strategic form so that they can start creating those sort of small steps towards achieving that. And we all know it's very hard to do on our own. That's why working in teams is so joyful, because you've got lots of minds together. And when you're working for yourself, it is a little bit more challenging in that respect. I have a cohort of coaches that I can work with if I get stuck with a certain, maybe a client topic or an idea, because it just makes it easier to talk about it out loud. So drawing out those skills is ultimately looking at what is it you want to achieve, and then what is it that you need to get there. What do you already have that maybe you need to dust off, and sort of brush up. And because, if you're looking at anything, even with what you guys do, one of the key contributors to success in the sort of financial services is often your people skills. And
Absolutely.
People don't realize that's such a powerful skill. If you're good with people and you're somebody that people want to talk to, then wow, let's get that out of the cupboard and let's polish it and make it amazing, because, that builds trust. And then with trust, you can apply your learned skills, which could be these new qualifications or attributes that you're kind of plugging into what you already have. And I think people really underestimate that foundation of being really good at talking to people, being really good at making people feel at ease, being really good at explaining things. Those are all really strong skills. And I think the difficulty we often see in big businesses is leadership based on where we were 20 years ago is I'll just tell you what to do and you do it. But that's not the case anymore. There has to be clarity. There has to be a sense of why. There has to be a sense of, we have to explain what the expectations are and where we're trying to go. There's more transparency people need. So those might need to be polished up a bit if you're used to more of a hierarchical business, or if you've never worked before at all, and you probably have some insecurity around, well, I don't know if I'm good at anything. Well, what have you been doing? Oh, well, I've been looking after, my mother, and I've been running the house, and I've, successfully, we've moved 3 times. I mean, you've got so many skills already.
Absolutely.
You just don't know what they are yet.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And I think, as you say, those people skills, because maybe they're not tangible with a qualification or so forth, people don't think about them as being highly valuable, when in fact they are. So our independent research revealed 10 overlooked roles, which actually would provide people with a good earning potential and a degree of flexibility. And 2 out of those 10 are actually in our profession, financial advice. So one is power planner, the other is financial advisor. So why do you think these roles aren't widely considered?
I think it stems back to our kind of initial education. We don't know about some of the sort of the jobs that are out there when we start working, because you're so focused on, there's like this industry, and there's this teaching, and there's medicine, and you don't really know what goes within that. And I think that education piece is so powerful, is just to do that research. So one of the things that I do often with clients, if they're considering a change, or if maybe they want flexibility, they wouldn't know about this, but they're trying to look for, what can I do that doesn't require me to do 4 years or a PhD, or I need to do it quickly because there may be some financial pressure, and that I can use my skills and strengths that I already have. And it's about doing that research and finding out, okay, speak to people. Like, who do you know who does something that seems flexible, or something that sort of fits in with, we all know somebody, or know people, or know friends of, that you can have conversations with to find out more about those roles. But we don't often do research phases in a lot of the work that we do. So, for example, if you're in a role where you're looking for flexibility, but you're currently in something that's very structured, there's always that fear, like, oh gosh, I'm really scared because if I resign, it doesn't go very well. Well, you don't have to do anything. You could just start by researching and see what options are available to you by speaking to people. And everybody loves to give advice. Everybody loves to have a conversation about what they do. And I always say to people, just da-da-da's husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, just get through to them and say, would you mind giving me a 15-minute conversation about what you do? How did you get there? What do you need to be good in your... And then people will just love it. They're talking about themselves.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I couldn't agree more. People love to help. And I think people have that fear of approach, that fear of asking somebody for, I guess in their mind, they're thinking it's a favour. But as you say, people love to help. It gives them a warm feeling, and they love to talk about what they do because they're genuinely really passionate about it. So yeah, advice is go and get that advice, go and speak to people. So also in our research, there was a notable difference in salary expectations between men and women. So why do you think that is?
Well, it's still there. I can't believe it's still. Do you know what? It's just that we haven't got to where we need to get to when it comes to that. I think there is still, women are still not as good as asking for what they think they're worth, as men are, and we tend to come from a more caring lens in the main. And if the salary says X, but we really need, and a few percentage above that or whatever it is, we say, oh, no, but they've put salary as X. Whereas I think there's a little bit more confidence. I'm generalising massively, and I'm sure there are lots of women out there who are now, really trying to bang the drum and get paid. But because, well, in my generation, nobody talked about salaries, so that you didn't know what somebody else was earning in equivalent roles. You'd never know. Yeah. I think when I think about the younger generations, I think there's a little bit more transparency there. And you can Google things, you can find them out. And there's LinkedIn that has posts, and many of them are posted with salary. So there can be a little bit more research. So it's difficult for companies to give different salaries. I think within roles, traditionally, I would say that women tend to be more grateful for promotion, whereas men will tend to be a bit more kind of, gallant, we'll just say, I think I'm worth this, or this is how much I brought in for you, therefore give me. I mean, I do a lot of conversations with women about this, asking for what they think they deserve, and there's a lot of nerves around asking, which we just got to get over.
Yeah.
But I just think instinctively we're a little bit more, oh no, well thank you, that's so great, thank you so much, but got to stop doing that. And the other thing is that, still the pathway in career pathway for women, if they choose to have a family, for example, is challenging because you're taking time out over periods of your career. You're probably putting the brakes on over periods of your career because you're juggling like mad. And that's automatically going to slow down that progression of salary. So I think that is existent. And I mean, they are trying to change things when it comes to paternity leave. But I still think in a lot of industries, there is, here, I'm going to say in the UK, I work with quite a lot of Scandinavian companies, and there is definitely more balance when it comes to paternity leave. But here, and definitely in America, the expectation wouldn't be that you would stop there for that long. But maybe, our Gen Zs will change all that because they are our little warriors. I say that patronised, I don't mean that at all. They're awesome, but maybe they'll ask for that and they'll say, I'm not going to accept that. And
it will be standard. Yeah.
And it'll have to be the way it should be. Whereas I think we've gone along kind of going, okay, well, thanks so much. I'm just grateful to have a job to come back to.
Yeah, it's definitely evolving and I can see it playing out. So in our academy, for example, it is often we get men and women come through the programme, and yes, a lot of women want or need the flexibility, but more men are coming and saying to us, I want to be able to take my children to school. That's one of my non-negotiables for my new career. So it is changing, but needs to speed up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the more people talk about it, the more people have confidence to also ask for it. And I coach some really senior exec men who have families who really want to be more present, and it's really difficult if you get onto, if you're C-suite and you're traveling the world, it's really difficult to be present and spend a lot of time with your children. For men and women, but that makes sense that there are more men on those boards, unfortunately, because it does tend to be the women who take a little step back in that sense.
Yeah. So much to discuss today, but Jo, I'm going to ask you one final question. What advice would you give to anyone considering a career change right now?
So we touched on it a little bit. I would say do your research. Don't be afraid of continuous learning. It is one of the most important things that even if you're not considering a career change, that you should be open to, is that we don't know everything and we have to keep learning throughout our entire careers. And curiosity in leadership is probably one of the strongest skills we can keep polishing, because the more curious you are, the less afraid you are of change. And so, it becomes exciting if you're curious. If you're interested in asking questions, we have to accept that we never know everything. You're never going to be the ultimate authority. There's always more out there. Actually, I was watching that solar system program the other day, which is incredible. And that sort of says it in a nutshell. It's just there's so much we don't know. And there is so much we don't know. And that applies to ourselves as anything else, as much as anything else. Education, fine. But we are continually evolving as humans. And as we grow and through our lives, different things become priorities. We have different needs. But if you are continually sort of polishing your curiosity skill, then I think that none of this feels like quite that fearful, and the world is your oyster. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.